She's gone. That was all he could say. Not come back, not I need you, not even her name. Just those two hollow words that echoed across the nursery like a cruel announcement of defeat. The room was silent, except for the soft whimpers of his baby girl, 6 months old, blinking at the doorway where Nia had just stood. Now all that remained of her was a faint scent of lavender, a neatly folded receiving blanket, and a handwritten note sitting beside the crib. He stared at it, unmoving. The last time something ended with a note, it was his wife's will. This one was different, but it still hurt. I hope one day you'll let love in, not just for her but for yourself. She left without asking for anything. No salary owed, no goodbye hug, just that message. And a child that wasn't hers, but felt like she had been. Before we go deeper, if this already hits you, tap that like button and drop A in the comments if you've ever walked away from someone you deeply cared for. And please, subscribe. These are the kinds of stories that might just remind you how much healing love can bring. This wasn't the first time Corbin Lane had been left behind, but it was the first time it felt like his fault. 41 years old, owner of one of the largest logistics firms on the West Coast, and still he stood there helpless. His daughter, Aria, now motherless, now nurseless, now in his full-time care, and he didn't even know how to hold her properly. She had entered his life quietly. No grand entrance, no perfume and stilettos, just soft steps, practical shoes, and a voice that knew how to soothe a crying child better than any lullaby app his assistant had downloaded. Nia Carter hadn't been hired to change anything. She was just supposed to help with the baby, nothing more. But slowly, almost without notice, she started filling in the spaces his late wife had left behind. Not by replacing her, but by showing up where it hurt the most, the everyday moments. Feeding schedules, warm baths, whispered songs in the hallway when the baby couldn't sleep. Corbin used to avoid that part of the penthouse entirely. Now he lingered by the nursery door, listening. At first he told himself it was for Aria's benefit. But deep down, something about Nia's presence began pulling at a part of him he'd long buried. He hated that. He didn't want to feel anything. Not again. The last time he had opened up, he lost everything in a hospital room with white sheets and silence. So he did what he'd always done, put up walls, stayed late at the office, spoke in short sentences, and somehow she still stayed until this morning. He replayed the last few minutes over and over, her walking to the elevator with her bag, not looking back. His voice caught in his throat, useless, and Aria reaching her arms toward the door as it closed, babbling the only word she'd learned from Nia. Ma. That did it. It wasn't grief this time. It wasn't even pride. It was fear. The fear of being left with a love you never learned how to hold. Corbin stood at the window as the skyline of Palm Heights blinked against the early light. A city built on sharp edges and clean exits, exactly how he'd built his life. Control, discipline, boundaries. There had been a time when those values served him well. They helped him survive foster homes, start his company with nothing but grit and bruised knuckles, and turn loss into power. But they couldn't raise a child. They couldn't teach a baby how to smile again. Only she could, and now she was gone. He held the note tighter in his hand, then finally looked over at Aria, still lying in the crib, her big eyes wide and confused. Her arms opened and closed like she was searching for something that wasn't there. He took a step closer, then another, but when he reached down to pick her up, she cried harder. It crushed him, not because he didn't know what to do, but because he now understood who did. The truth? He didn't just miss Nia because she was good with the baby. He missed how her presence made him want to try. He remembered the way she used to hum while folding baby clothes, how she'd gently remind him to look into Aria's eyes when feeding her, how she left little notes on the fridge like, "Aria smiled 4 times today. You should be the 5th. At first, he found those things unnecessary. Now, he would give anything to read another one. He turned the card over, checking the back. Nothing. It felt like a chapter had closed without permission, and for the first time in years, Corbin Lane didn't know what to do next. He wandered the kitchen in silence. It was spotless, just like he preferred. Every surface gleamed, not a dish out of place, but now it felt sterile, the kind of clean that doesn't feel lived in. Nia used to make tea at this hour. Always chamomile. Always for him, not her. He never drank it. He told her he didn't need to be coddled. She kept making it anyway. Quiet resistance. One night he took a sip just to prove a point. She didn't say a word, just smiled. He remembered that now. He remembered everything now. That's the problem with people who show you care. When they're gone, everything echoes. He glanced back at the nursery, where Aria's cries had softened into tiny hiccups of confusion. She'd been quiet lately, sleeping through the night, smiling more. That was Nia, not him. He'd spent the last few weeks watching a woman heal a child he couldn't reach. And in doing so, she started to heal him too. But he never said thank you, never asked her to stay, never told her he looked forward to her voice more than his morning reports. Now all he had were memories, and a choice. Was he going to let her walk away, or finally become the kind of man worth staying for? That's where this story begins. Not with love, but with failure. Because sometimes, the one person who changes your life does it by walking out the door. Nia Carter didn't grow up around wealth. She grew up in a neighborhood where the streetlights flickered half the time and the buses didn't always show. But what the world around her lacked in luxury, her childhood was rich in something far more lasting: care. Her grandmother, Miss Eloise, had been her anchor. A retired school teacher who never raised her voice but whose silence could stop a room. After losing both of Nia's parents in a car accident when she was just 5, Eloise took her in without hesitation. Not out of obligation, out of love. There were no nannies, no delivery services, just early mornings with warm oatmeal, old gospel music playing through an aging radio, and the repeated reminder, kindness is strength, Nia, but strength ain't loud. It shows up, even when no one notices. That shaped her. While other kids dreamed of being singers, celebrities, or tech moguls, Nia always wanted to care. For someone, for anyone who needed it. In high school, she volunteered at local shelters. In college, she studied pediatric nursing with laser focus, even when hospitals in more prestigious zip codes offered her higher pay and fancier titles. She stayed local. It wasn't because she lacked ambition. It was because she knew where she was needed most. Until the bills started coming. Eloise had grown older, slower. A gentle shuffle replaced her once brisk walk. Her hands, once steady as she braided Nia's hair each morning, had begun to tremble. Diagnosis: early-stage Parkinson's. The medications weren't covered. The physical therapy was inconsistent, and every dollar started to count. Nia picked up double shifts. She accepted late-night home care visits. She took on newborn cases from families who couldn't afford postpartum nurses just to keep her grandmother comfortable at home. One day, an email landed in her inbox from an elite private placement agency. The subject line read, "High-profile client in Palm Heights seeking private pediatric caregiver, urgent need, discreet experience required." She nearly deleted it. It was everything she'd avoided. Ultra-wealthy families with rules, distance, and control. But she clicked. The pay was 5 times what she earned at the clinic. Full access to resources, flexible hours, 6-month-old child, mother recently deceased. She hesitated for hours. Then she thought about Eloise, curled on the couch, whispering through clenched teeth that she didn't want to be a burden. Nia replied, "Available for interview. When do they need me?" The first time she entered Corbin Lane's penthouse, it felt like stepping into a museum. High ceilings, expensive finishes, clean lines, cold energy. She was escorted in by his assistant, who spoke like a human calendar, barely looking up from her tablet. Nia's eyes, though, scanned the space with a nurse's instinct. No soft corners for a crawling child, no warmth in the lighting, no sign of joy anywhere. Then she heard it, a muffled cry. She followed the sound to a room that barely felt like a nursery. Sleek crib, designer baby monitor, everything perfect except the child. Aria was red-faced, fists clenched, voice cracking from crying. There was a bottle on the table, untouched. Without asking, Nia walked to her, scooped her up with practiced ease, and began softly humming an old tune her grandmother used to sing when her parents first died. Aria quieted within seconds. That's when Corbin entered. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, no smile, no introduction. "She doesn't calm easily," he said flatly. Nia looked down at the baby, who was now blinking peacefully against her shoulder. "She's not difficult," Nia replied, barely above a whisper. "She's just lonely." He didn't respond, just nodded once, clipped, then walked away. She should have taken that as a warning. Instead, she stayed. Something in Arya's tiny body, tense one moment, relaxed the next, felt familiar. She'd seen that same reaction before. The job came with a contract, boundaries, a schedule that said, "You're here for the child, nothing more." Nia followed the rules. At first, she arrived quietly each morning and left quietly each night. But each day, the silence in the penthouse grew harder to ignore. She started leaving soft music on in the nursery, brought homemade soups when Arya's appetite dipped, changed the formula brand without asking, because Arya's stomach had been tight and bloated. The new one worked better. Corbin didn't say a word about it, but he noticed. She caught him watching her sometimes from down the hall, just standing there, not speaking, not intruding, just watching. Nia didn't know what to make of that. She just focused on the baby. She tracked Arya's feeding times on sticky notes instead of apps. She adjusted her sleep routine based on how often she flinched in her crib. She whispered affirmations during diaper changes like, "You are safe, you are loved, you are more than enough." Because deep down she wasn't just helping Arya. She was reminding herself of those things too. And the more she gave, the more it felt like this wasn't just another caregiving job. It was a responsibility, one she hadn't expected to matter this much. It had been 2 weeks since Nia started. Every morning the elevator opened into silence. The kind of silence that didn't just live in the walls, it lingered in the air, in the way the light never felt warm, in the echo of her footsteps on polished floors. Corbin was always in his home office or nowhere to be found. On the rare occasions she saw him, he spoke in quick, direct phrases. "Bottles on the counter. She didn't sleep last night. Just let me know if you need anything." But he never asked about the baby's progress. Never commented on the way Arya now reached for Nia when she entered the room. Never acknowledged the difference. And yet Nia knew he was paying attention. The baby monitor had a second screen, one that sat on the corner of Corbin's desk. He never spoke about it, never admitted he watched, but every time she hummed the same lullaby or rocked Arya in her arms, she'd catch the subtle shift, the monitor's red light flickering. A signal. Someone was listening. Nia knew how to work with guarded people. You didn't push, you didn't pry, you just made consistency feel like safety. So she showed up every day with calm in her voice and purpose in her hands. Still, Corbin kept his distance. He never touched Arya unless it was absolutely necessary. He rarely looked her in the eyes, and he never, ever smiled. There was one evening when Arya had a mild fever. Nia stayed late, applying cool cloths to her forehead and whispering gentle comforts. Corbin walked in briefly, arms crossed. "Will she need a doctor?" "No," Nia replied. "Just rest, and someone nearby she trusts." He nodded stiffly and left the room. That night, she found a tray outside the guest room door, ginger tea and crackers. No note, no explanation. She didn't touch it, but she understood it. It was his way of acknowledging her effort, not verbally, not directly, but it was something. The next morning, Arya was better, and when Nia carried her into the living room, she giggled at her own reflection in the glass door. Corbin looked up from his tablet. For a moment, less than 2 seconds, his mouth twitched. Not a smile, but the shadow of one. It disappeared as quickly as it came. But Nia saw it. The days passed with unspoken patterns. Nia began to leave tiny updates on the refrigerator. Things Arya enjoyed, new sleep rhythms, how much she drank, which lullaby calmed her the fastest. She never expected a reply. Noted. Also, she laughed in her sleep last night. Nia stared at the words, startled. It was the first thing Corbin had said, voluntarily, about something personal. Not work, not scheduling, just a small observation. A piece of his world cracked open. She didn't respond. But the next night, when Arya dozed off, Nia sat in the living room for a few minutes longer. She knew Corbin was nearby, likely down the hall or in the next room. Without looking up, she said, "She's starting to recognize your footsteps." There was a pause. Then his voice, flat but quieter than usual. "She doesn't cry when you hold her. She knows I'm not afraid to." Silence. Then the sound of him walking away. One night, during a routine feeding, Arya began fussing, turning her head and crying despite Nia's soothing efforts. Corbin was in the hallway, passing by. He paused, watching from the corner, arms folded. "She does this sometimes," Nia said gently. "It's not pain, it's frustration. She wants something familiar." Corbin tilted his head. You mean you? Nia met his eyes for the first time in days. No, I mean connection, eye contact, a voice that doesn't sound like it wants to be somewhere else. That landed heavier than she intended. Corbin straightened. I'm doing my best. Nia lowered her gaze. So is she. There was no anger in her tone, just truth. She wasn't trying to judge. She was trying to explain. He walked away again. But this time, he didn't close the door behind him. Do you think a person hardened by pain can truly change? Let me know in the comments below. And if you believe in second chances, give this video a share. Someone out there needs to hear this story. Later that week, Corbin came home earlier than usual. Nia was in the nursery, laying Arya down after her bath. The room was dim and quiet. She was whispering the same song she always used, an old tune passed down from her grandmother. Corbin stood in the doorway. She likes that song, he said quietly. Nia turned. You've heard it enough to hum along by now. He stepped into the room, slower than usual. I don't sing. You don't have to, she replied. You just have to show up. Arya stirred, eyes fluttering. Nia gently brushed her hair aside and turned off the lamp. Corbin didn't leave. He watched her tuck the blanket just so, the same way she had done since day one. She trusts you, he said. I earned it. She wasn't being prideful. She was being honest. Trust in this house didn't come easy. It began with a question, not one about Arya's feeding schedule or nap routine. It was late evening. Nia had just finished tidying up the nursery when she found Corbin in the kitchen, still in his work clothes, sleeves rolled up, a glass of water in his hand. You always this patient? He asked without turning. She paused, unsure if it was a real question or just noise. I try to be, she answered. People deserve patience, especially when they don't know how to ask for it. That made him look at her, fully, not just in passing. I don't expect anyone to give me anything. That's the problem, she said quietly. You don't expect it, so you never recognize when someone offers. He didn't reply, but he didn't walk away either. Instead, he set his glass down and asked, Have you eaten? Dinner was silent for the first few minutes. She only stayed because Arya had just gone down, and the air in the penthouse felt too heavy to leave without cutting through it somehow. He ordered takeout, nothing fancy. Nia noticed that he ate with precision, like someone who only ate to keep functioning, not for pleasure. She broke the silence. Your daughter smiled 6 times today. Corbin blinked. 6? She smiled when I walked in, when I gave her the green spoon instead of the pink one, when she pulled off her sock, twice at the stuffed lion, and once when she saw you standing in the hallway. He looked down at his plate. She sees you, Corbin, even when you don't think she does. He didn't speak, but she noticed the slight movement in his jaw, like a man chewing more than just food. Days turned into weeks, and something began to settle between them, not closeness, not yet, but an awareness, a gentleness. One evening, the power flickered out, a city-wide outage. The penthouse dimmed. Emergency lights kicked on briefly, but then even those faded. Nia had just finished bathing Arya. She walked into the living room to find Corbin lighting a few candles. Not scented ones, just tall white sticks he found in a drawer. We'll have to go old school, he said with a faint smirk. I'm not afraid of a little dark, Nia replied, sitting on the floor with a warm blanket and a sleepy Arya. He joined her, not close, but not distant either. I used to be, he said. What? Afraid of the dark, not because of the shadows, because of what I couldn't control. She adjusted Arya, who was half asleep in her arms. Were you alone a lot? He nodded. Moved through 6 different foster homes by the time I was 12. Learned not to get too attached. Learned how to survive without hope. Nia didn't try to fix that statement. She didn't reach for him. She just listened. I started writing letters to myself, she said after a pause. He looked at her. What kind of letters? On days I felt invisible, I'd write down the things I wished someone would say to me. I kept them in a shoebox. Still do. He exhaled. Not a laugh, but a sound close to surprise. That's something. They sat like that for nearly an hour. Arya asleep. The city outside still in blackout. The light around them soft and simple. The next day, Nia arrived early. She found a note on the kitchen counter. Shoebox letters. I liked that. It wasn't signed. It didn't need to be. Later that evening, she made soup. Not as part of her duties, but because Corbin had mentioned skipping lunch. She left it warming on the stove. He came in late, exhausted, shirt sleeves rolled, tie gone. Smells like home, he murmured. Then maybe it's working. They sat at the counter. The mood was different, unspoken but thick with something unfamiliar. He asked her about nursing school. She asked him about his first job. The conversation wasn't fast, but it flowed. When Nia stood to rinse her bowl, her hand brushed his. A small moment, a tiny accident. Neither of them said anything. But when she looked back, his eyes lingered longer than usual. That night, he sent her a message through the home system. Nothing dramatic, just, "Thank you. Not for the soup. For staying." It happened on a Sunday. Nia was sitting on the carpet in the nursery playing with Arya, who had just learned to clap. Corbin stood nearby, arms crossed, watching as his daughter babbled and squirmed. Arya reached for Nia's face, patting her cheek with chubby fingers, and then, clear as anything, "Mama." The room fell still. Nia froze. Corbin's face shifted, not in anger, but in a kind of disbelief that had no words. Arya giggled, clapped again, and repeated it. Nia's voice cracked as she gently corrected her. "No, baby, Nia." But the word had already landed. Corbin cleared his throat and left the room without comment. Nia stayed, heart pounding, unsure whether she'd just crossed a line she never meant to approach. That night she considered leaving, not because of guilt, but because she knew how hard that moment must have hit him. But the next morning he left a folded note on the nursery chair. She said it because she feels safe. "I'm not angry. I'm trying." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a confession. But it was enough. The rhythm changed after that. Corbin started returning home earlier. He lingered in the kitchen longer. Sometimes he held Arya without looking like he was made of stone. One night, Nia found him asleep in the nursery chair, Arya on his chest, both of them breathing in sync. She didn't disturb them, just stood there, silent. It hit her then, how far he'd come, how much farther he had to go, and how, somehow, she'd become a part of it. It was a rare kind of morning. Sunlight streamed into the penthouse through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Arya was laughing at her reflection on a spoon, and Nia was preparing her usual puree, carrots and pears, Arya's favorite. Corbin stood across the counter, sipping black coffee. No rush, no tablet in hand, just there. "I was thinking," he said, breaking the calm. "Maybe this weekend you could take a proper day off. I'll manage." Nia tilted her head. "Are you sure?" "Not really," he said, lips curving slightly, "but I want to try." She gave a soft smile. "That's progress." They didn't know then that the silence was temporary. That peace, no matter how genuine, can be interrupted without warning. The headlines hit by mid-afternoon. Her phone buzzed relentlessly, texts from old classmates, co-workers, even a cousin she hadn't spoken to in years. She didn't check until she got home. There, splashed across multiple blogs and gossip pages. Is billionaire Corbin Lane dating his child's nanny? A candid photo of them at the farmer's market. Corbin pushing Arya's stroller. Nia beside him, smiling, holding a small paper bag. It was a harmless moment. They weren't holding hands. There was no touch. But in a world hungry for distraction, the image fed a story no one had permission to write. She felt sick, not because of shame, but because this wasn't her world, the kind that made people headlines just for existing near someone powerful. Her privacy had always been her armor, and now it was gone, without warning, without protection. Corbin didn't call that night. Nia didn't sleep. By morning, reporters were hovering outside her apartment complex, cameras ready. She left out the back entrance and headed straight for the penthouse, expression locked in place, heart in knots. He met her at the door, phone in hand. His tie was crooked. His jaw was tense. "I just saw it," he said. "This wasn't planned." "I know it wasn't," Nia replied. "But the damage is still real." She walked past him into the living room, dropping her bag beside the couch. "Reporters were outside my building," she said. "My grandmother saw the news on television." Corbin exhaled, setting his phone down. "We didn't do anything wrong." "No," she said, "but it's not about wrong. It's about respect. My name wasn't meant to be on someone else's narrative." His tone shifted. "It's just noise. It'll pass. That's easy for you to say. You've lived in this world. I haven't." He stepped closer, voice lowering. "Are you telling me this is over a headline?" "No," Nia said sharply. "This is about control. I came here to care for your daughter. That was the agreement. What we've become, Whatever it is, wasn't supposed to happen like this. He crossed his arms. So what, you regret it? Nia paused. No, she said finally. But I regret not protecting myself better. That landed. Corbin stiffened. The man who had once admitted to being afraid of the dark now stood in it again, emotionally distant, guarded, closed off. If you think walking away solves this, he said, go ahead. Nia didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She just stood a little taller. I don't want to walk away, Corbin, but I won't stand in a place where I'm seen as disposable the moment things get uncomfortable. Didn't reach for her, didn't ask her to stay. That told her everything she needed to know. She packed lightly. Just the basics, her notebooks, a change of clothes, and Arya's favorite bedtime story, which she'd left by accident months ago and had kept meaning to return. The baby was sleeping, peaceful, unaware. Nia approached the crib slowly, heart thudding like it knew this moment would stay with her long after the elevator doors closed behind her. She kissed Arya's forehead, smoothed her blanket, then reached into her tote bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She laid it gently beside the crib and whispered, You are going to be okay. You are already so loved. She didn't say goodbye to Corbin. Some silences are the final word. Corbin found it the next morning. The nursery was quiet. Arya had woken up calm, no tears, just blinking up at the ceiling with wide, expectant eyes. He reached into the crib to lift her, and that's when he saw it. A small envelope. No name on the outside. He opened it. I came here to care for your daughter, but in the process, I watched a man try to build a wall between himself and the one thing that could save him. I didn't come to fix you. That's never been my job. But I hope one day you let love in, not just for her, but for yourself. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't angry. It was the most honest thing he'd ever read, and it wrecked him. What would you have done if you were Nia? Stay for love or leave for your peace? Comment below, because this is where everything changes. And if someone in your life needs this kind of story, share it with them now. Without Nia, the penthouse returned to its original state, quiet, efficient, and emotionally vacant. The faint hum of appliances filled the space, but it wasn't enough to mask the emptiness. Corbin walked from room to room the morning after she left, expecting something, anything, to feel normal. But the light didn't fall the same way. The air felt heavier. Even the furniture seemed out of place. He stopped at the nursery. Arya was awake, sitting up in her crib, playing with the hem of her sleep sack. She didn't cry. That's what got him. She didn't cry. She didn't call out. She didn't ask for anything. She just sat there, quietly waiting, like she understood that the person she trusted most wouldn't be coming through the door. Corbin tried to resume the schedule, bottles, diaper changes, naps, but it didn't feel like parenting. It felt like maintenance. He fed her with one hand and answered emails with the other. He cleaned while she watched him, expression blank. He played music and danced awkwardly, trying to mimic what Nia had done. Arya didn't laugh. Not once. By the third day, Corbin sat in the nursery rocking chair, Arya asleep in his arms. He whispered, I think I messed up. She stirred. Small fingers gripped his shirt. I miss her too. The regression was subtle at first. Arya started waking up at night again, unsettled. She grew irritable during feedings, and worst of all, she stopped trying to speak, stopped making sounds entirely. Where there had once been baby babble and claps, now there was silence. Corbin called her pediatrician. Everything looked fine physically, but he knew better. It wasn't about her body, it was about her spirit. She missed Nia, deeply, and in her small, wordless way she was showing it. Corbin stood in the kitchen late one night, hands braced on the counter, remembering the things Nia used to say. How she spoke to Arya with full sentences, even when Arya couldn't respond. How she explained the world with softness and patience. He had never done that, not once. He wanted to try now, but the silence between him and his daughter felt impossible to cross. That's when he remembered the shoebox. It was purely accidental. He was cleaning the guest room when he found it. A cloth-bound journal, tucked between folded towels in the linen cabinet. Simple cover, no decoration. When he opened it, his chest tightened immediately. The first page, things I've noticed while loving someone else's child. He hesitated, fingers trembling. He could have closed it, should have, maybe. But he read. Each page was a record of Arya's growth. Observations Nia never told anyone. Things even Corbin hadn't noticed. March 14th, she favors her left hand. I wonder if she'll be left-handed like her mom. March 19th, she doesn't laugh at loud toys, only silly faces. That means she's looking for connection, not stimulation. March 26th, I fed her too fast. She didn't complain, just hiccuped 3 times and smiled. She's patient. March 30th, she looks toward the hallway when she hears his voice. He doesn't know she's watching him. Corbin sat down. Every page was a window into care he didn't even know was happening right in front of him. Care he had ignored, or worse, dismissed. And then toward the end, April 9th, I think I've fallen in love with both of them, not in the way stories tell it, but in the way someone falls for the idea of belonging. His eyes burned. He closed the journal and pressed it to his chest. For the first time in years, he let the grief come. Grief for what he'd lost, grief for what he had refused. Grief for the woman who had walked into his life to care for his child and unknowingly restored his own humanity. He didn't call ahead, didn't ask permission. He just got in the car, dressed in clothes he didn't think too hard about, and drove to the southern side of the city. The air was different here, slower, familiar in a way that reminded him of the early years, before the money, before the walls. He stood on the porch of a modest house with a garden in front and wind chimes on the side. Before he could knock, the door opened. Nia, hair pulled back, baby monitor in one hand, surprise in her eyes. Corbin? He tried to speak. Nothing came out. She waited. He finally managed. I don't have a reason good enough for how I treated you. She didn't reply. He took a breath. I read the journal. I didn't mean to find it. I wasn't looking for anything. But I found everything anyway. Nia closed her eyes for a moment, then stepped onto the porch, pulling the door closed behind her. She's okay? She asked, voice even. No, he answered. She's not. Nia looked away, blinking fast. She doesn't smile, doesn't laugh, barely makes a sound. Silence. Corbin stepped closer. I didn't come here to ask you to fix her again. I came to tell you. You were never just a nurse. You were her voice when I couldn't speak, her peace when I was chaos. He swallowed. You were mine too, and I let you go because I didn't know how to ask you to stay. Nia's eyes watered. I'm not asking you to move back in, he said. I'm just asking if we can start over. They talked on the porch for nearly an hour, about Aria, about Eloise's health, about boundaries and expectations. Corbin didn't press, didn't plead. He listened. When Nia asked why now, why come forward only after things fell apart, he answered honestly, because it's the first time I've ever looked in the mirror and wanted to become someone worth loving. That didn't fix everything, but it made something possible. Before he left, she handed him a clean bib. Bring her next time, she said, and stay for lunch. Have you ever realized you were the one who needed healing? If Corbin's journey is hitting you hard, drop A in the comments and share this video with someone who needs to believe in change. Sometimes the person we push away is the one who saw us before we knew how to see ourselves. The first lunch was quiet. Corbin arrived with Aria in a front carrier, her fingers clutching his collar like it was the only anchor she trusted. Nia opened the door and smiled, one that held warmth but also boundaries. Inside, the house smelled of cooked yams and roasted chicken. Soft music played. The television was off. Everything was still. Eloise sat nearby, watching the interaction with careful eyes. She greeted Corbin politely, then leaned into Aria's tiny hand with a grin. She knows family when she sees it, she said, voice thin but confident. They all sat, passing food around a modest table that somehow felt more genuine than every boardroom dinner Corbin had attended in his life. No one mentioned what had happened before. There was no digging through hurt, no rehearsed apology, just time, just presence. After the meal, Corbin helped wash the dishes. Nia didn't stop him. That became a rhythm. He showed up once a week. No gifts, no pressure, just consistent effort. On the third visit, he brought a soft book Aria had left behind at the penthouse. On the fourth, he brought lunch so Nia didn't have to cook. He didn't ask to stay longer than welcome, but he didn't rush off either. He showed up, and that was new. Aria began smiling again, slowly, then laughing. Her first attempt at dada came during a diaper change. Nia had paused, stunned. Corbin, who heard it from across the room, froze. She said, I know, Nia said, nodding. She meant it. He didn't speak for several seconds, just lifted Arya gently and whispered, "I'll never stop trying to deserve that." Nia didn't know when it started, but Corbin had begun journaling, not for business, not to record transactions or track assets. He wrote about Arya, about Nia, about himself. A notebook tucked inside his briefcase, opened during long evenings or early mornings when his mind was loud and he needed to center it. In those pages he was honest. "I used to measure my days in wins. Now I measure them in giggles. She puts mashed peas in her hair like it's art, and I let her, because I'd rather clean her head than break her joy." Nia asked me once if I ever sang. I didn't answer, but today I sang to Arya while feeding her, off key. She still smiled. Forgiveness isn't earned in grand gestures. It's in showing up when no one is looking. Months passed. The awkwardness faded. Conversations grew deeper. One evening, Nia brought out her old journal, the one she thought she'd lost. "I found this," she said, placing it beside his tea. He looked at it, then at her. "I read it," he admitted. "I wasn't supposed to, but it changed me." "I know," she said. "That's why I left it." Silence sat between them again. This time, it didn't hurt. "I'm not asking for what we had," Corbin said finally. "I'm asking for something better, something chosen." Nia didn't answer right away. She just reached for the journal and turned a page, then write it down. By Arya's first birthday, everything was different, but not loud. No big party. Just a picnic in a quiet park under wide trees, with a blanket, soft cupcakes, and laughter that didn't need to echo off tall buildings. Corbin sat with Arya on his lap, helping her open a plush toy. Nia passed out paper plates. Eloise watched from a distance, legs wrapped in a blanket. They didn't need fireworks. This wasn't about spectacle. It was about peace. As the sun dipped lower, Arya crawled between Nia and Corbin and laid her head on Nia's leg. Her eyes fluttered closed. The chatter slowed. Corbin reached into his bag and pulled out something wrapped in a small cloth. Nia looked over. He placed a leather-bound journal in her lap. It was worn at the edges, clearly filled. "I've been writing," he said softly, "every day since the day you left." She opened it slowly, eyes scanning the pages. Quotes, moments, reflections. Drawings Arya had scribbled, little notes he'd made in the margins, and on the last page, "You brought life back into this house. You gave my daughter a voice and me a reason to learn how to listen. Will you be our forever?" Nia looked at him. No tears, no gasps, just a calm, steady answer. She reached for his hand and said finally, "Sometimes love isn't loud. It's not flowers at the door or dramatic apologies in the rain. It's someone showing up every day, even when they're tired, even when they don't know how. Love is watching someone become who they were always capable of being, not because you asked them to change, but because you believed they could." The truth is, the best love stories aren't fairy tales. They don't start with once upon a time. They start in the middle of brokenness, in a quiet nursery, in a tired kitchen, in a journal someone was never supposed to read. And they grow not with grand words, but with small acts, with lunch shared, with songs hummed, with forgiveness chosen again and again. So if you're holding on to someone, or letting go, or learning how to forgive yourself, just remember, love doesn't have to be perfect to be worth it. It just has to be real. If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button for more journeys of hope and healing. Like, comment, and share. And never forget, the best love stories are the ones that make us better people.